I mean, it's fine. I just asked her. Can you grab me a pencil, please? Oh, all right. Thank you.
See, back when Chris Hagan was the financial director, at budget time, he would always ask each council member individually,
Phew.
What?
I know. I know.
not,
I know. I don't know what happened all of a sudden.
and then he would go over everything one on one. And then when it came time for the meeting, there were, either any of the questions that were just like,
Yeah.
we're already, and I thought it really made the process go better.
I've met with Lewis a few times, but I don't have any questions.
But I mean, so many of the questions that come up are just like,
Hi, Tony.
You forgot. I know, but I said fees too. I still got to email you the pool fees. I just haven't had a chance. I gotta get actually to do it. Just been so busy. Yeah, I know you. I know you. I know you. No, I told Kevin to. I get it. I talked to Kevin Friday, so I got to get that to you guys. Just a review. So no, no, the pool fee that I reduced in here and I changed it. But yeah, please bring that up so then I can get the copy and go.
it sounded pretty bad, actually.
I just said that. I got to email you the pool fees. I know you do it on purpose. Don't say it again. Don't say it. No, absolutely. I know. I got to get that over to you guys so you can review it before. Thank you. I was gonna grab it before. Actually, where is that on the schedule? No, rec. I don't even see it on the budget. We're gonna put it on the public. All right. Um, Lewis,
Yes.
those fees. Can I grab them before we leave here? I need that.
Can we
Or I can wait till tomorrow.
can we email it to you?
Sure. That's great. Oh, it doesn't. Like his dad?
Okay, all right. Can you do me a favor? Could you
That's great.
all the stuff that was part of the budget?
I'm just at an added party.
No, no, that's fine. Go ahead. Hi, Mark. How you doing? Is a 24-year-old municipal league fine?
I think it is.
You do?
No.
Well, there's something about statute of repose after 20 years, but I can't give a legal opinion when it involves my client. I mean, my other client.
He wants to just give an overview of the department.
I have to,
Yeah.
Buy it right off the rack. You don't know what's up there. school at?
What's that?
Where are you going to school at?
Houston.
Okay.
You have more copies of the budget? Oh my God. That's okay, I don't really need it.
No, is it?
Who looks at that stuff?
No, that can't be right. It's supposed to be like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the back. Okay. I was about to say that's crazy.
Crisscross will make you wanna.
I was like,
I would make it 80s, man.
yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
Crisscross will make you wanna.
Thank you.
Hey. Oh my gosh.
What's up, Crystal?
Oh gosh.
So, how are you? I gotta read your email about the denied.
Karen.
I saw it was denied, I read the headline. There are just too many emails. It just sucks.
No, trying to crisscross on us. I don't know. Hey.
What'd you just send us, Mark? What we're going over today?
Amendment?
Okay, thank you.
We're gonna see it up there too, Mark?
Hey,
I got my reading glasses on though. Well, I don't, but they're here. Well, it is 6 o'clock. Are we ready, Mr. Sinecki? We'll just wait for our clerk and we can get started then.
Okay.
Well, we went wireless with that now, huh?
We did, yeah. Mazin got us all set up.
Good job, Master.
I understand Joel had some jokes you were going to tell, maybe? No, nothing today? Okay. Or improv.
Okay, we are ready to get started for, yes, ma'am, we are. For our Tuesday, budget, review here. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Rose?
Here.
Ms. Sultana?
Here.
Dr. Ruggles?
Here.
Mayor Panto? Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Here.
And Mr. Ettinger?
Here.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sinecki, our director, and he's going to cover the executive branch for us this evening.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Brown. Okay, so as Councilman Brown mentioned, we do want to cover general fund revenues and expenses for the executive branch, the Department of Administration, which covers the administration, HR, and IT, and then we'll do the finance department as well. So to get us started, we'll start in numerical order, and I guess I get to go first. So finance department updates. For 2025, the expense budget, starting with that one, because that's maybe a little bit easier. For my department, expenses are up about 6.2%, or $44,000 year over year. And the primary driver of that is due to healthcare costs. I believe Estelle will touch on some of those trends that we're seeing. And obviously the costs are shared across all departments. So you'll see that, healthcare line be up for all the departments. We touched on this. Yes.
This 6.2% that you're using, is this a number that you obtained from last year? Expenditure? Or this?
Yes. 6.2% over last year's budget.
My understanding that this year is extraordinarily high.
The 6.2% is just is my overall department, the finance department overall. So the healthcare cost of that is 43.8%. So that's up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's up much more than 6%.
We are gonna talk, we are gonna get into the healthcare budget and claims being $800,000
Okay.
over last year's budget, if that's what you're asking. But we're not there yet, so we'll get to it.
Okay, we did touch
So
on.
this number won't carry through all of the departments?
This is just for finance.
Right, and this is just for the finance department overall. So not just the healthcare costs. This is my overall budget. So for the clerks so it's our salaries for the clerks, for our revenue agents, for our accounts payable, and then deputy finance director, etc. Next highlight on the expense side I wanted to bring up was the non-resident EIT expenses. And these are all related to our MMOs and the aggregate pension funding level, which we'll go into a bit more detail. I did touch on that in one of the presentations, I think a committee meeting we had a couple of weeks ago. But we'll take a look at that again because there are a lot of moving pieces. So I want to make sure that council understands that and has an opportunity for questions.
Might I just add?
Yes.
In our last meeting, our investment advisors said that since they had taken charge of the fund, our fund has gone up by $30 million. Okay, and so that's one of the reasons why this is happening. We've had really good. We've had really good investment strategies that have resulted in significant amount of money.
I just want to add that we, according to the latest actuarial study, while the fund is performing well, above our historical trend, our return on investment, the fund in itself is still at around 78%, 79% funded. Okay, so yeah, well,
No, I think overall it's like 72.
oh, excuse me. All right, so Mark just said 78, 79 is the number for fire, and police is funded at like about 68%. So it's somewhere in the lower 70s. Meaning we don't have, if everyone took a pension today, we would only be able to fund roughly a little over 70% of the liability. All right, but it does. Everyone's not going to retire today.
Yeah.
So there's still work to do,
Yeah.
and there's still contributions coming. So
Yeah.
and things look good. All right,
And-
we can talk about that later.
And Dr. Ruggles' point there, one of the reasons why we was able to do the toss the back 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago now, was because our finances were stable.
Correct.
Correct.
All right. That's correct. But in Dr. Ruggles, you're right. Their annual return, if we look at the last couple of years, and it does help out the MMO. That's important. So we're going to get into it in one of these slides because it's complicated on how this affects the general fund. All right. So everyone needs to understand this. But they've been our financial advisor has had the fund in double digits. So we're at like 10, 11%, which is nice. And the city has been averaging around 7.5%. So we've had a couple good years. You're right.
Okay. Last point on expenses, just as a reminder or maybe an update for newer council members. We do have a fund called the 808 Fund or the Sewer Services Fund, which is in essence a carve out of general fund expenses that are allocated to our sewer fund. So in a discussion that we had or meeting we had with Standard & Poor when they were going through one of our ratings, they recommended that we create a sewer fund, and that's basically for the underground sewer lines across the city. So it's not the sewer treatment plant. We already had a separate fund for that. They suggested that we have a separate fund for the sewer services. And what we do is allocate a portion of our overall cost. So my department, as an example, we do billing for sewers. We do collections for sewers. So a large chunk of our expenses get kind of carved out and get sent over to that. So you'll see that as a negative or a contra expense, a negative expense in those lines. So again, as the department's expenses go up, a chunk of that, bigger chunk of that will then go over to the sewer services fund. Okay, very high level for the official expense budget. So these would be, the mayor, council, controller, city clerk, and solicitor. There are really no dramatic changes in any of those outside, again, of the healthcare costs. So those have increased across all departments, as I noted previously. Council has seen a copy of this recently as well. Again, just our top 25 revenue streams for the general fund. I don't know if there are any questions on this, but I did try to lay out the timing of when those come in and kind of the dollar amounts and what part of the overall revenue budget they do make up in the general fund. So obviously earned income tax just by itself, that's the non-resident piece, is 29%, and real estate taxes are another 24%. So a good chunk of our revenues are tied up in those two lines. Okay, moving on. Talk about the general fund revenue highlights, and there are a few. Obviously, a lot of those were listed in the prior slide, but as far as a little more detail, overall, the general fund revenues are down about 0.5% or $200,000. Resident EIT continues to grow, and as we add more residents to the city, that will increase. And we are seeing wage growth as well. So that number is pretty solid and has been even through the pandemic, which had surprised us all. Non-resident EIT, we lost about $1.9 million out of that revenue as a result of the funding status of the pension plan. Now I know, again, we'll get to the slide and we can go into more detail on how those are all interrelated and why we're losing that revenue.
Could I just jump in real quick?
Sure.
Just as you're looking at your budget, you'll notice that in the non-resident EIT, it's not zero, it's 500,000, okay? Because there's a portion that was not under Act 205. We've always received that. So in one of the slides, again, Mark's gonna go over the portion that just affects the MML. Just wanna make sure everyone understands that.
Next, we'll touch on real estate taxes. We do anticipate an increase in real estate taxes given the new projects that are coming online. Those that are even in the LERDAs, we do expect increases, and we have rehab projects coming online as well.
Just to be clear on the real estate.
Yep.
We were told at one point in time, as these buildings are built, there are assessments at various points, right? Okay.
Correct. So the LERDA, what's the word I'm looking for, Louis? Incentive allows for developers to come in, they'll pay taxes. Year one, they'll pay taxes, the same amount of taxes prior to the assessment. So year one, they pay the same amount that had been paid before, and then every year after that, they'll pay 1/10 of the new assessment, or the difference between the original assessment and the new assessment. So 1/10 of that will increase each and every year as they get to that
And
10th
Mark,
final year.
with that being said, where are we at with the 108? The loan that we took out for the housing authority.
I will have
Should
to.
be at the end of the
It is
right?
close. Yeah, it is very close to being
Yeah,
being settled.
and that could be reviewed with CDBG, that's CDBG funds.
Yeah.
So when does that clock start?
after?
It starts, that's a good question. It starts when there's a CO in place, that when you have that 10%, and then it starts increasing there slowly. So right now, we are receiving the base tax. In this case, for the Pine Street garage, it was 0.
Right.
Okay? So that one we'll have to look at, but the other properties would have been whatever they were paying prior to the acquisition and then the development. And once you get the CO, that's when the county comes back in and reassesses.
From that point to the next.
Yeah.
So for that one over there, it was 0 too then.
For that one
We
over,
owned it, right?
for that one, well, you know what, we'll go back. It does,
Okay.
the county lags sometimes,
Uh-huh.
but we'll go back and we'll just double.
Well, I mean, it
double
was
check
the hotel, then it was,
that. Then it was the city,
right.
and then it went
Right.
back, and we had a petition in order to go to 0. They don't give it to you automatically. You actually have to file, to get that 0%.
Louis, what's the Silk Mountain 13th Street? That should be coming at 100% now of the new tax rate, right? That's the only one.
I think it's getting close to 10.
I think
But
it's 8 right
in
now.
our discussion with Dr. Ruggles here, the good news is that when we look at our projections, we didn't get that granular on that LERTA increase, because it's small, but it does add a percent. But we can, when we get to that line item, we can dig in a little bit more, and I think that's a good question. They're actually, we can look at it even closer, Dr. Ruggles. You do this every year, you always find a little bit of money somewhere, so.
I mean, once you get it, then it's just add 10% every year, but I mean, you know, what does it,
That's right,
what's the initial, right?
that's right. We did get that granular on earned income tax. But you got a good point, so we'll actually go back to that, so duly noted.
Okay, moving along, looking at sewer revenue. I believe over the last few years, the expectations that we had were set a little high with the budget, so we've kind of tamped that down. Also, as part of the proposed budget, there was a $1 additional fee. So currently, the utility bills have a $1 fee for both sewer and trash. Those are now going to $2 each, and that's basically to cover shipping and handling costs in essence.
That's per month.
Per month, correct. Solid waste, if you recall, the city took a rather large hit for our private hauler, or I'm sorry, our not private hauler, but the hauler for the city garbage. There was a large expense, a portion of which was passed along to residents last year. We're recommending that another portion, that was $5, I believe it was probably $11 or $12, that the increase would have been on a per capita basis. We increased the cost to the residents by $5. We're proposing another $2.50 be increased to, again, offset some of that additional expense that the city incurred for the trash haul. Water systems rent, there is a lease in place that allows for a 2% annual increase. We are in negotiations with the Eastern Suburban Water Authority. I don't know, Louis, if you want to comment on that, but it's still ongoing negotiations. The general municipal pension revenue stream is dictated by the Commonwealth. So they come up with a what they call a unit value that they pay per employee, as far as aid for pension accounts. So that money goes basically directly to the pension. They vary that from year to year based on, I guess, their budget. And so that number increased this year, so you'll see an uptick in the general municipal pension revenue line item. But again, that's dictated by the state. Casino revenue, with the expansion of Wind Creek, we do believe that revenue will increase in 2025. As far as the mercantile taxes, we continue to focus on those. So business licenses, business privilege taxes, and even admissions tax. Those are definitely a focus. We have seen a bounce back on admissions tax, and yes.
What is Wind Creek expanding?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was on the casino revenue. Yeah. Yes, it was casino. Well, casino revenue comes in from the casino. So as more people go to the casino, our assumption is that there is.
But we only get
Tables.
table games. We don't get, so if they expand slots.
Well, Just the hotel, actually, they expanded the hotel, so we assume that there were more people actually attending, so whatever that proportion is, if it's more table games, or if kept the same proportion, but just increase the amount of people, that we would get a larger share of that. Were you gonna say something?
Well, no.
Okay.
You're, I guess we're going on to admissions tax.
Yep.
The only thing I would say is that, there's, while we're back to pre-pandemic levels, we do think that there's room for growth in the short run. I think that there's price increases on tickets that has brought us back, but I'm not sure if attendance is still at pre-pandemic levels. So that's good news.
Online, I'm talking.
All right. So I just wanted to say that regarding admissions tax, while numerically we're at pre-pandemic levels, I'm not sure that the number of attendees is at pre-pandemic levels. I think there's room for growth there. I'm just making that point. But the assumption in the budget still stands that we're not going to change that.
That falls with amusement taxes
Yeah,
then.
I'm just saying that I think there's going to be you're going to see some continued growth there.
Not that it's a lot, but just maybe a thing to factor in. I was told yesterday that Easton Seaburg soccer, both boys and girls, are going to be in at Lafayette, and they're charging admission. So,
Well, they did play this year, I think, but at the Forks facility, soccer's played over there. So I don't know if they're moving it to the stadium here in town or in the city, or if they're keeping that out at
I was told
Forks.
by a senior at Lafayette, or at the high school, that they're playing at Lafayette. So, just as a,
Okay.
might be
Keep an eye
a
on it.
small amount, but something to maybe factor in.
No, you're right. I mean, it just goes to the point. I don't know how much wiggle room there is. To your question on your observation on real estate, I think there's some room there, but we'll look into that. But I don't think I wouldn't adjust admissions tax. I wouldn't recommend that. But anyway, I just want to make that point.
Okay, building permits over the last several years has, obviously with the building going on, has been on quite a tear. We think that that's going to be down slightly, just given the fact that most of the larger projects have been permitted already. Transfers from the sewer fund, that's again an allocation back from the sewer fund with any monies coming back in is based on an allocation, so nothing really exciting there. The Eastern Area Joint Sewer Authority rebate has really been rather unpredictable. Again, probably since I've been here, and prior to that, it really depends on how things are performing with them. So we took the last several years of those rebates and used that as our kind of go forward for 2025. Previously,
Question on that.
Yeah.
Been my understanding over the last several years, they've been doing major upgrades, and they're all done. So I would think this year they're not going to be putting so much money into those upgrades because they've done what they intended to do. It might be something just to double check on, because it might, I mean, it might be $100,000, $200,000 difference.
Was that the number that Dave gave us for 23 or 24? Was it 24? And this budget, what's our number right now? 400,000? Yeah. You're right, Dr. Ruggles, but it's we actually just received notification, so we'll put it formally to the board. But we should, I think, see almost double what we normally receive from the sewer authority in terms of our rebate, double. So not 400,000, close to 800,000. But that number just came into us, so we have to analyze it. But you're right. We could see that, but that's just as an aside. Oh, okay. I
So,
understand.
okay.
Okay, never mind.
The last two bullets are basically related. As council, I'm sure recalls, we are required by the Treasury Department to have committed or spent the ARPA funds by the end of this year. And in essence, that's what we've done. So going forward, there is no more really ARPA budget per se. Some of the funds we were able to use those or basically build those into our fund balance, and that's why there is still a prior year undesignated amount in here, but it is less than in prior years. Anything you want to add, Louis?
No. So on the, before we, I guess, move on to the MMO payments, which require some thought, does anyone have any specific questions on revenue? So the revenue section's short. So you could look at all the departments. Does anyone have any questions on the revenue side? Mind you, when we go the next several nights, we're going to bring up department heads, and you can bring up some of these questions again. But tonight, in particular for finance and administration, where you see a lot of the larger revenue items, like what we just discussed, we just went over the highlights. We could certainly address those questions now, because it is going to move. We're going to move on. We'll just have to flip back the page, etc. If you want to go backwards.
I have a question about the ARPA fund.
Sure.
So ARPA fund is no longer available in 2025. Is that no longer available from the federal, or we just allocated all the money and then, yes? Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, so it was there were two tranches that came in, $10.3 million, give or take, in 2021 and 22, and that money has then been
Allocated.
basically assigned and used during the last several years.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Now we're kind of moving over to the EIT, aggregate pension, and MMO discussion. So starting from left to right and then going down, because why not? In 2013, Easton implemented its non-resident EIT, which was set at 0.95%. The overall EIT tax was 1.95%, but the 9.95% was used to basically fund the pension. That money was dedicated to directly to the pension account. The 2023 actuarial study, which recently came out, so it is a year delayed, determined that the aggregate pension plan, so that combines fire, police, and the O&E plans, that they were funded at greater than 70%. And why does that matter? Well, it matters for several reasons now. What happens is, according to Act 205, the 0.95% that the city had set aside for the pension plans in non-resident EIT, earned income tax, that has to be removed now. So I think in the last presentation I said it's a tool that's no longer in our toolbox, right? We've kind of lost that. So what does that do to our non-resident EIT? And Louis touched on this earlier as well. We had budgeted originally $2.4 million for 2025 for non-resident EIT. Given this change and the funding level of the pension, again, a large portion of that EIT is gone. And that portion is $1.9 million. So that leaves about $500,000 in the non-resident EIT kind of going forward into 2025. Okay, so that's kind of the bottom right box. Moving now over to the left, what that triggered the 70% funding status, and that's basically now moved us up from distress level 2 to distress level 1. Just in my humble opinion, 70% is not a whole lot different than 69%. I think that's a bit of an arbitrary percentage because there are still 30%-ish of the plan that isn't funded, but regardless, we have to follow the rules. And so we're removing EIT, but what it did on the flip side is it decreased our MMO. And how that works is the MMO is basically the city's contribution to bring down the outstanding liabilities for our pension plan. So that unfunded 30%. So with the change and the funding status changed now to 70%, our MMO dropped. And if we're comparing year-over-year drops in the MMO, we are at $7.4 million for, again, the aggregate pension plan. So again, fire, police, and O&E. we were paying $7.4 million into them. There was an additional about $500,000 that goes into PMRS, but that's more or less fully funded, so we're not really bringing that up here. So on that front, the aggregate, we had a drop of $1.4 million. Just as a next step there, we also wanted to point out that should the pension plan have been under 70% funded going into next year, there would have been an additional drag on the MMO. So we would have gone up by another $800,000 in our MMO. So if we kind of combine those and compare those to the $1.9 million that we lost in non-resident EIT, we're not in that bad of a position from kind of balancing those two out.
Mark, while we're there, could you explain to council, we still have an opportunity to capture just a little bit of that for the residents?
Sure. So the portion that we are capturing, that $500,000 that is in next year's budget, captures the portion of those residents that, those people, non-residents, that come to work in the city but don't pay an earned income tax to their home municipality. Very often so the remaining 1%, right? So we were at 1.95, 0.95 goes away, 1% remaining. Palmer Township charges or takes 0.5 of say my salary, right? So that'll stay with Palmer Township. But if there are non-residents who don't have a home municipality that charges EIT, so the city will keep that, as will the school district. So we split the 1%. Half goes to the school district, half goes to us now. So that's, yes, Dr. Ruggles.
Can I ask, can I say something before you say, because it goes to you. This is a comment for you before you ask a question. So if we stayed under 70%, we would have had to pay, the city would have to pay out of its general fund, according to this schematic here, about an additional, I think, $800,000. Okay, we would have taken that out of the budget. So
Yeah, but we'd have gotten an additional 1.9 million.
No. That would have been on top of the 1.9 million.
Oh, on top of that?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So when we looked at the numbers, but the whole entire piece together, obviously this made sense because like there's no way you have to work with the actuarial study. And then when we looked at the numbers closely, for example, one of the assumptions, because this is a two-year study that's done for us, so our hands are tied. And in that 2 years, the market performed a lot better than what we thought. So it went from what, 6.5? Was it 6.5? 6.5 to 7.5%. That assumption, and that moved the needle completely in terms of our return. What's critical about this, Dr. Ruggles, I'm watching and I'm looking at you too and everyone else, is that's why the performance of the fund is, critically important. One thing that could drag on this, it's a little worrisome, is that we're still calculating because the budget for the pension, but we need to know, and Chris Hagel asked this, our controller, how much money after the MMO is paid for, right? How much is left over to go into the pension? That's the question. Like how much is going to continue to be invested into the pension? And that is what we're working on. So if we can come back to you and just tell you it's going to be higher than what it was pre-removal of the Act 205, then that's good. If it's low, it's going to take us a little bit longer to keep getting gains and momentums in that investment.
Well, this past year, that differential was about $100,000 that went into the pension fund.
Yes.
So our MMO, as we made the payment,
That's
That was a month, yeah,
A month.
100,000 a month, yeah.
every month.
All right, you did.
Yep.
That's
An
good.
additional $100,000 went into investments. The rest of the MMO went to paying retirees.
Got it.
Okay.
This
So
doesn't
the
directly.
reduction
Yes.
in our MMO, the question is, what you're saying
Yes.
is how much is actually going to go
Into the pension fund.
investment,
Yeah.
or are we going to have to draw from the investment to pay our
Make a difference.
So this is a tricky one because this is one that we could gain, and well, right now, the general fund is not putting any money into that MMO. Oh no, we are. Well, excuse me. We are using general fund money to put into the MMO. The key would be to put less money of the general fund into the MMO, but that's contingent upon the performance of the fund, and also it could be contributions. One of them are employee contributions. The second one would be what we're contributing from the general fund right now. So, but we're on the same page.
I know that, like,
Hopefully,
Lewis,
hopefully we have the greater return.
Look, that's why when we're in the meetings, Dr. Ruggles in there, you got to question everything every single time, you know. And I thought our last pension board meeting, we had some really good discussions.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Um,
with,
Real quick question.
please.
When we go back to the second bubble on here in the chain, you're talking about 23 um,
The study.
non-resident money, right? Okay. Are we collecting the non-resident money from people who are over in that building right there working?
That is a good. I will have to see if we've got them, because obviously they're here working. Yeah, they should be tagged for the city of Easton while they're working here.
I'm
We'll
just
check.
concerned,
Yep.
I mean, you know, sometimes, I don't know how they draw that where you are type stuff, you know, from, if they're looking at an individual's address, or they're looking at their employer's address, or how they do that, you know. Because, you know, if the contractor is not a city address, how are they gonna know that that money is supposed to come here?
I'll get back to you on
Okay.
that and make sure that that we're capturing them. Hey, are there any other questions on those moving parts there? Does it make some sense? Okay. With that, we'll go on to the administration. I
All right.
think Lewis will take over.
all right, so the Department of Administration's 2025 proposed budget is 16.7 million. That's a 14.8% decrease over the prior year. This decrease is primarily driven by the elimination of the non-resident EIT, as well as the ARPA grant revenues worth 1.3 million in 2024. And the decrease in ARPA utilization is also reflected in the prior year undesignated drop of 534,000. So in the if you notice in revenue, and you can ask questions on any one of those line items. One of the line items that I focused on is prior year undesignated. Prior year undesignated takes directly from the general fund, all right? From the fund balance, all right? So in some years you use that line item to help balance the budget. So it's an important number that I always look at. And that's why I'm highlighting it. What I'm saying, that drop of 534,000, that still leaves, there's still a balance in there for prior year undesignated. But what happened was our general fund actually increased as a result of all this ARPA money coming in. It increased slightly. Some of it could be left over, so we're using it. And in this year's budget is about $180 some thousand dollars. But it's a drop of 534,000. I just wanted to explain it to everyone. If you're looking at it, it's not that clear of what that means. So, so in prior years, let's say pre-ARPA, if you had to balance the budget, and this is for council too, you could potentially take more money out of the general fund in order to increase other expenses, but that's it's not advised. Particularly because we do have a fund balance policy that requires council to maintain at least a 10% general fund balance. And the goal is no lower than 10%, no higher than 15%. So I just want to bring that up.
So, just a quick question on that particular point.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea, and just from an administrative point of view, to review that fund balance so that was quite a few years ago that we established that. And, things may change over that period of time. It may have to increase, it may have to decrease. I
Yes.
don't know. But I mean, I think it might be a good idea to, at some point in time,
Sure.
revisit that, to see
There's,
if it's adequate. I mean, if price is going up on everything, one would think that you would want to make that balance grow year after year, just to meet the inflation aspect of money,
well, we could benchmark that. And one of the items on tomorrow's agenda is a resolution for council to approve the administration's applications to the strategic management program, the STAMP program, which are going to do a 5-year analysis for the city. So this will be a third-party consulting firm, and this is through the Department of Community and Economic Development, which there's significant grants for that. So it's not all general fund monies, but that's certainly I think a question that will come up for them, the fund balance policies. For everyone, just so as a refresher, the council adopted 3 main fund balance policies in 2011. The number 1 was a general fund policy, which I just explained. The other one was for healthcare, all right? And the third one was for insurance. These are noted in the audit, all right? So they're noted in the most recent audit that you have on hand, which would be for 22. The 23 one should come up. We have, since 2011, and since I've been here, adjusted the fund balance policy for insurance. It used to be at 1.5. We dropped it to 1. But to your point, it's something that you should look at, regularly. And when we do with the audit, we always look at it, but it's part of our internal practice. But maybe it's something that we can discuss more here with council.
I don't remember too many things from back in 2011, so just to refresh my memory, was that an actual number or was it a percentage of the budget?
It's a percentage of the budget.
Oh, well,
So to your point, they're all. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, the general fund is a percentage of the budget. The 2 other ones is a number.
Okay.
So those, maybe the number is the one that we look at a little bit closer.
Right, sure.
The percentage. I think it's
So
still.
the percentage of budget, I would think that's okay, but I would think the other 2 would be something that we want to pay some attention.
I think that with the consultant and then with our auditor and the GASB standards that we follow, we can look at it again and always we can talk about it so we're all on the same page and everyone understands why we do that. And then why do we do that also? Number 1, cash flow reasons. Like once the tax receipts come in early February. Well, excuse me, they come in early February, and Mark put that schedule for you. About 80% of the taxes come in, and we use most of that money to fund the operations of the city. But come December, the bank account goes low, so we depend on our savings to continue to make payroll and provide services. So until then, from December until about early February, we're running mostly on savings. There's not a lot of revenue coming in. So, that's one of the reasons why that fund balance policy was put in place. The other one, I'll tell you, it's just good fiscal management, and the rating agencies look at that as being positive. So that affects our overall credit rating as well. It's just that we know what we're doing when we're managing our bank account here, so to speak. So
Do you see any, I'm sorry,
good.
do you see any problem in the future since our EIT is now greater than our property tax? And the timing of when we get money from the EIT is different than when we get property tax. In the past, property tax has been the big number. It's no longer that, and I'm just wondering if that's something in the future that we really have, as far as cash flow is concerned, we really have to pay attention to.
That's a really astute question. That's something I don't think we thought about.
I'm not asking for answers.
No,
tonight.
I mean, that could be years. That could be.
Let's pay attention to that.
No, I think it could be years from now, but I think that's something, again, that's going to come up through this strategic consulting review. And part of that review, again, I don't want to get into that. This is going to be tomorrow when you approve the resolution. I'll be sending out a memo that explains that. But part of that review, Mark and I had a call with the Department of Community and Economic Development, is going to be a survey that's not only going to hit all of our employees, but there's also going to be interviews with each of the council members, in addition to looking at all the financials, et cetera, and doing the hard number crunching. So there's going to be qualitative and quantitative analysis. That's a good question. Actually, it's a real good question. You're right. I don't know.
Well, I think if I may, the EIT comes in regularly every month. And there are true ups every quarter. So I mean, from a cash flow exactly from a cash flow perspective, I think it would be a better thing rather than getting front end loaded with real estate taxes.
Then, right?
Well, too late.
But you're right. But the percentage of the real estate continues to decrease every year with increases in our fixed costs.
Right.
So and payroll. So that even though it's growing nicely at like 2 to 4%, we'll talk. If anyone wanted to ask, like our growth assumptions were, I think what were they? 4% for real estate.
Yeah.
Around 4%. That's been pretty good, but at one point it's not going to continue to grow like that. Right. Same thing with EIT, but EIT probably has a little bit more of there's more opportunity there. Yeah, because the city traditionally has lower per capita income, so as the entire market grows, there's opportunity there. People can make more. Their salaries could increase, et cetera. There's definitely opportunity. We've seen that over the last several years with all this wage inflation. All right, I'll move on. Expenses. The Department of Administration expenses are down 9.3%, and that's primarily due to the sunsetting of the KOZ program. Mark, do you want to say anything else on that?
So the KOZ program was a program that it's a Keystone Opportunity Zones that the state implemented, and in essence designated areas. So like the Silk Mill, I think the Governor Wolf building fell under the KOZs, and that allowed the residents there and the businesses there to not pay taxes. I believe real estate tax was exempt, earned income tax was exempt, and so that was a large chunk of change, if you will, that was not being collected by the city, and that was a 10-year program that expires at the end of this year. So going forward, we won't be issuing any refunds for those dollars. So that'll be a plus for the city.
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Estelle on HR.
All right, so before I get started, I wanted to review with you the current staff. We're currently at 256 employees, of which 22 are considered part-time. Our overall retirement numbers, that includes fire, police, ASME, and City Hall. We have 20 employees that are 65 and older, and 17 employees ranging from the ages of 60 to 64. Specifically with fire, we have 13 employees ranging from 20 to 34 years of service, those of which would be eligible to retire. With the police contract, they have a 20 and 30-year agreement. With police, we currently have 11 employees that have 20 years or more service, and with the police contract, they're eligible for retirement at 20 years. Slide 1, we specifically, thank you, is specific around training and education. We had a really good year this year. We were able to develop a handbook. We'd like to say a special thanks to one of our employees, Lori Zabo. Her daughter, Rachel, worked with us and helped us create this handbook. It's approximately 147 pages. It goes over a lot of policies, a lot of details, a lot of information that we haven't had here in the city to provide to the employees, and we hope to be able to roll that out to all the employees before the end of 2024. We put together an emergency evacuation plan. As you notice right here in the back, we have evacuation maps designated throughout the building, which we did not have in the past. We put together also, we're going to be doing fire drills to make employees aware of where they have to exit and enter the buildings in case of emergency situations. Today we held our active shooter meeting. We're going to try and get active shooter training put here in City Hall, not only just for the public safety, but also all the employees' safety also. The complaint procedure we put into place, it was put into place specifically for the public, but our regular complaint process is also put into the handbook for our employees. We had the CPR, AED, first aid training. We had 42 city employees participate in that training. It was held right here. The mayor, Mark, Lewis, and myself were also a part of that. And as mentioned before, by the end of 2024, we hope to have all the handbook training completed for ASME, Fire, Police, and City Hall. For the revenue is budgeted at 1.9, which represents 16% increase over 24. And Mark had talked about that a little bit in his slides, previous slides that he addressed. For expenses, we reflect a 93 increase. This is mainly because of legal costs. We do have 2 open contracts currently, fire and police, which may result in arbitration. Overall, though, HR department has been doing very well with the grievances. We've not had to have any large legal action with any of the grievances. For 2024, we're looking at approximately 3 grievances versus years past.
Very good.
That is actually, I want to give just kudos to Estelle right now. She's been working really hard trying to develop relationships and earn the respect of the unions. You know, it's not necessarily that easy. You know, it's a tough bunch, but I think she's been doing a really good job keeping communication lines open. So and all the I asked her to put together this little overview of the department and what she has done. I just want to say it's not something that you should overlook. I just wanted her to highlight that so council is aware of it. We're really focused on our policies. So we are going to make sure council, as you are all employees, sign off on our policies so we're all on the same page.
All right, moving on to the next slide.
Dr. Ruggles, go ahead.
Oh,
Just a
sorry.
quick question.
Yes.
On your evacuation,
Mhm.
when I'm out on the Bushkill Trail, I walk by the Finney and Smith plant, and there's a sign there that says rallying point. Do we have one?
We do not. In the evacuation plan, we have it designated that this side of the building goes over to 3rd and Ferry, and that side of the building goes over by Larry Holmes and 3rd Street. So we don't have specific signs saying Easton Rally, but it has been designated in the evacuation plan.
Yeah, I did that for many, many years, so I kind of understand that.
No sign, but we know where we're going. And I get to go to third.
Sure. Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, is that a
Exactly,
wise
the
thing
porter.
to have separate locations?
Well, it depends, right? But it depends of what's occurring in the building, because you do not want your employees traversing. All your employees traversing. You have to cross the building to get to a location, right? So there's a reason why there's a south point and there's a reason why there's a north point. It's not perfect, but in case
I mean, once they get outside, they can traverse, right?
once they get outside, right? We could traverse. And look,
My thing is that, you know, I thought one of the major reasons was, is there anybody left in the building?
Well,
Right?
Well, we're going to have designated team members in each department
Great.
responsible.
That's the question I have, because that's what I used to do.
Yeah, so like my responsibility would be make sure that Shakira and
Yep.
Shelley are with me.
Right.
And then in finance, Mark and or Peter would be designated. And then in codes, it would be Julie or Dwayne, because they would know that the code officers are out and about. And then up front would be John and Dave Hopkins, and they would designate people if they were out.
Great, I was just gonna ask, that's the way I used to
But
do it.
just theoretically, I don't want to belabor it, but I mean, just theoretically, if one of Mark's people go over to
yeah.
a break or into the break room, and all of a sudden we have to evacuate, they go out that side, Mark's over here.
Correct.
Where's my person?
Well, what we would do is we would communicate amongst each other. So I would have, as I do, Mark's number, Dwayne's numbers, Lewis's numbers, all in my phone, to then call over to that location and say, so-and-so was in the restroom, or so-and-so was in the break, or so-and-so was in this office.
Okay,
They're designated here with us
okay,
so that we can let the fire know.
okay.
Because there's a couple of scenarios. Number one, well, and I explained this earlier, that prior to coming here, I had what's called NIMS training with the county. This is for officials. So part of that training is training for disasters of buildings, et cetera. We were required to do that over
Yep.
at the county. And so you want to be so many feet away from the building, and that's the collapse zone. So you want to be away from the building in case it ever collapses. And there's also, this would be different from a fire than from like an active shooter exercise. In that case, we would relocate to behind the garage, right? But if there's a fire, we don't want to go through the garage because we want to get away from the building, and we don't know if the garage would have been compromised. So you want to clear out as much as possible, both ways, going the opposite directions. But it's not perfect, but we have to have a plan.
Has there been any thought about doing something for public meetings? I mean, I hate to even think about it, but you know, there have been instances in the U.S. where there has been council meetings, an active shooter. I mean, have we ever considered doing something? Okay.
Estelle, quick question. I know you probably don't have it now, which is fine. When you get a chance, can we get an updated list on all of those employees that live in the city of Easton? Not 18042, not Wilson, West Easton, Glendon, or Williams Township, but West Ward, College Hill, South Side, and downtown. And then also including these new 4 positions.
Yes, the spreadsheet I already have. We were speaking of that a few weeks ago, so I can actually easily send that over to you tomorrow morning.
All right, thank you.
With the zip code. It gives a breakdown, I think, even specifically by department.
Okay. Now, but the zip code, can we go a little deeper? Because 18042 would include Glendon, West Easton,
Yeah,
Wilson, Williams.
it goes by like Palmer Township, Forks Township. It
Okay,
gives you
perfect.
specifics.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then, what was the question about the new positions?
No, if you could just
Okay.
include those as well.
All
I know
right.
one of them is where one of them lives, but I don't know the rest.
Okay, the job descriptions have been created for those positions, and I would be happy to send those over for your review.
No,
The new
not
pos-
the description.
They're not hired.
correct.
Yeah, just adding the people where they live, that's all.
Yeah.
Where the-
No, I got that. Sorry, Frank.
That's okay.
Okay,
Thank
so the new positions on the next slide, project manager, that will be for Public Works and engineering. Sustainability coordinator will also be for Public Works. The full-time parking enforcement officer will be for the police department, and the deputy director will be for the Department of Community of Economic and Development. On those positions, the project manager, our engineering tech 2, will be retiring. And we're going to do a little bit of a change in responsibilities for that role, which adds the managerial role, more responsibilities. So that's where we've come up with the idea of the project manager. The sustainability coordinator will be more around the climate action plan. That will be also under Dave's team there. The deputy director with economic and community and economic development. Currently, we have 2 people under John Kingsley's group. One of those positions will still stay on the wage structure. However, this position will backfill that with giving more responsibilities to the current
But we'll
employee.
still stay at the same number. Or we're staying at the same number, we're adding one.
It will be an added number, but we won't backfill a
Gotcha.
previous position.
Gotcha.
And then for the full-time parking enforcement officer, that is a new position. That will be overall just benefiting having one full-time employee out there doing collections for the parking. So it could create a little bit more revenue for the city.
Estelle.
Quick on that, and I don't have the number in front of me, but did we increase the revenue from parking tickets as a result of that?
Slightly.
Estelle or Lewis, not for a revenue purpose, but for quality of life purpose. I don't know if we have a plan, but we're going to need more than one full-time parking enforcement officer. the neighborhoods are horrible. I'm getting calls every day. I'm talking to Marcus every day. I'm talking to Hopkins every day, especially on weekends. I think everybody pretty much understands that 5 o'clock on Friday, the neighborhoods are not being looked after. So I know downtown is, but the neighborhoods aren't. I'm getting more complaints in the last 3 weeks about College Hill with the cars parking too close to the corner and people can't see, and we just don't have the enforcement. And I think it's, even in Southside, we have no parking blocks. They've gotten the idea that they can't park there during the week. Friday at 5 o'clock, they're parked there until Monday morning at 6, and then they leave again. So it's quality of life issues I think we have to try to work on.
Yeah, and I talked to I talked to Marcus too about that, especially around the area of our church. Even though the sign is up, people on that block will still park there, and it's designated for a certain time on a Sunday. And then the city get out there a day before, or maybe 2 days, to put up signs if there's going to be a funeral or a wedding or something like that. And if it happens on a weekend, we just can't move them unless we call the police, and then it's tough to get them because they're in sectors, So, something to think about.
You guys will have your opportunity to talk to the chief when he reviews his budget.
Okay.
His budget,
Right,
because the
that's
traffic
what's up.
division, which the PEOs are under, fall under his purview. So from an operations standpoint, you guys can ask him that question. We're I don't disagree with you. We're just looking at the numbers. So we're just telling you what's new, what's different. Okay? I mean, I could tell you if we could afford it or not, but operationally,
that's the big-
operationally, and then the input that you get from your constituents
But I
have to
think
be
the
all
big
put
point
together.
is, can we afford it? That's why I'm
Well-
asking here tonight. I mean,
Well, right now, the budget's balanced, so the answer is technically no, unless
so
there's a
the
cut.
answer is council has to look for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can work with you, but
No, I know,
it's
but
balanced.
it's council.
Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Rogers?
When Lafayette built the new residence hall,
Yes,
they agreed to
Yes.
fund a position.
yes,
Is that still funded?
yes.
I had a resident explain to me that nobody is enforcing anything up on the hill. And I mean, I know I should probably go to the chief for that.
Yep.
But, I just didn't know what happened to that position, I guess. And I just wanted to make sure that it was still a funded position.
Councilman, what position exactly is it?
When Lafayette built the new residence hall up on the hill, as part of that construction, they agreed to fund a parking enforcement
Oh,
officer.
parking enforcement, okay.
I think part-time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Part-time
Yeah, part-time.
parking enforcement officer
On the hill.
to patrol in that area to ensure that parking was enforced.
Well, Dr. Ruggles, I'm happy to report to you that that person probably exists because last Friday in one of what's become our rare noontime basketball games, I had half my car extended beyond the sign that says no parking beyond this point, and I have already contributed back to the city $25.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, it took me 5 days to discover that I had the ticket. They must have winded it around the wiper, and I drove to the city and back, never saw it until this morning. But in any event, there's somebody out there who's looking to see if your tailgate is beyond the sign and
Well, this
giving
resident
tickets.
lives right by the college and says that students are parking out in front of their house and not moving, and they don't have any sticker on their car at all, so, and never getting ticketed, so.
Well, yeah,
I understand.
that's good. That's good to bring up to the traffic department because is a tattletale allowed? I mean, where they could just call up a number and advise of that because
Yeah, they can call, what I was told is they can call the police, but if the police are busy, it doesn't happen. The part of College Hill on the other side of Cattell Street is just not being touched at all for that. But we'll talk to the chief next time.
Yeah, so listen, Mark and I'll try to get like some quick answers. We'll be compiling, we're taking notes and we'll compile and we'll get back to give feedback. Maybe not like tomorrow. Sometimes we put them together and send it as an email to all of you all like before the next meeting. But certainly, I mean, you've brought this up more than once, and the most appropriate individual in the city to have here is the chief. police, and we'll definitely communicate it with him, because that way he can explain to you and then go over the logs and go over the detail. Well, we'll be able to we'll get a quick answer on the logs, et cetera, because we track all that time, but
Appreciate it.
that's a good one. All right,
Just one real quick, Councilman Pittibone, I think one of the things that we can do to potentially solve this is just have car registration in the city. And I think maybe this next year, we'll hold a series of public meetings to discuss that. A lot of people who I've talked to, especially out in the West Ward, are like, yes. You know, they're really behind it, because they see it as a way in which apartments that have large number of people living in them and each person having a car would then go away. And so it opens up a lot of parking spots for them. We would have to administer it, but it still would be I think it would be a win for people as far as parking is concerned.
I'd definitely like to hear more about it. That would be a fee to the people, though, that's registering the cars, right? That would
Yeah,
have to-
but I think that sometimes they would be very willing to do that instead of carrying their groceries an extra 4 blocks to get to their house. You know, if it were something where they could get better parking in the result as a result. So.
Are any other local municipalities doing that right now? Like,
I'm sorry.
are any other municipalities, are they doing citywide, like car registrations? Do they have similar, are there any other local municipalities that have something like that?
I don't
know any locally that have, but,
I'd be curious to hear more about it.
I mean, the only registration we have is up on College Hill, you know, and that's actually free.
Well, downtown, anyone who lives downtown, our permits or our registrations, yeah.
You could put
A little
burden
different, yeah.
on people.
There are spots up on, by the courthouse also. There are permits for the courthouse, which
Oh,
are
that's
free.
right, that's right.
Yeah.
You have to re-register.
I have a question. Going back to the positions, the position that will be replaced, are we expecting to see any decrease or increase in the salaries, or everything else will stay the same?
For the new positions?
And the existing positions?
Well, the project manager would be a new position, but that funds would be backfilled by the engineer tech 2 that's retiring. So that salary would be just transferred over to that. The sustainability coordinator, that is an all-out new position, no transferring. So that would be money that needs to be coordinated towards that position. Same with the full-time PEO. And for the deputy director, that would just be a little bit of a pay increase to a current position.
And the other salaries would just stay the same, right?
No.
Not expecting anything decrease or increase?
I think they got it.
no, there's increases. The bullet,
Well,
or
yeah,
the
on
bullet point below there.
the next point, we'll talk about increases specifically.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the pay adjustments, there will be 3 that you'll review: the finance department, human resource department, and the IT department. Specifically, the reason for these pay adjustments is the overall industry comparison and reviewing the City Hall current salaries. And that current salaries for City Hall is specific to my department for the human resources. And then the overall increase for administration for 2025 is expected to be 3%. For the ASME per their contract, 3%, which means their contract will expire in 2020.
Words out of my mouth, yeah. Took the words out of my mouth, you got it.
Yep. Their contract will expire at the end of 2025. Police and fire were budgeted for a 2%, but please note that we're in the middle of contract negotiations with both of those.
Gotcha.
Thank you. All right, and the slide that you all have been waiting for, healthcare. This one's the tough one. It's overall an $800,000 increase over 24, reflecting over the national cost. What we're seeing is, well, let me start off with a good thing. Starting in 2024, we were able to change brokers. We went from Kessler, Wolf & Miller to BSI. The reason for this change is BSI is offering better options. They have a larger network of information for us, data and resources that we feel will be able to help manage our benefits and continue to offer the best possible benefits to our employees. But again, possibly doing that at a lower cost. And that's what we're trying to do. They have a lot of resources. They came in, they did a very large presentation. We marketed 3 other brokers before choosing BSI. We had presentations. They came in and explained everything. And out of the 3, we feel that BSI has the most to offer to us. With that being said, they came in and they gave us an overview of some information that we may not have been focusing on over the past few years with not having that data available to us. And we realized how much healthcare is changing. We always focused on the older clientele or our older employees, saying that they were always our costers. But in reality, and BSI brought this to our attention, is it's really our younger generation. As babies are coming in, we're getting married, we're having babies. Babies itself, a ICU baby could skyrocket our costs over 1 year, one baby. So those are the type of costs that we have to start to think about and inquire, because as our younger generation, which we are hiring, is coming in, they're having the families and doing that, that could accrue a lot of cost for us.
And the other factor too is, although we're looking at 800K this year, we've been very lucky in other years.
Correct.
Of being self-insured. That's the gamble that we take.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. But
Could I-
we're going to continue to focus. I'm sorry.
No.
We're going to continue to focus on wellness. We're trying to put some wellness programs into place so that employees are more so being forced to go to the doctor and get at least their well visits. I found last year in the open enrollment meetings that many of our employees aren't doing that. They're not going for their yearly exams, which are covered at 100%. And that was thanks to the Obamacare. And we don't have a right to say, no, we can't cover that. It's a law. So, but employees are not taking advantage of that. And I think that's really important, because from my experience with that is, if you don't go get your blood sugar checked or your high blood pressures, your number one killer is high blood pressure.
The silent killer.
Yep, and you never know it unless you're checking it. So if employees aren't at least going once a year to get their blood checked or their blood pressure checked, diabetes is a number one, also a more of a silent killer, not as high as a high blood pressure. But we're seeing in the prescription costs that the diabetes medicines and the high blood pressure medicines and stuff like that is what's affecting our plans. If you wait so long to go and get your diabetes checked or your blood pressure, your levels are much higher, so that means you need more prescriptions or higher medications, which then cost more. So if we can catch the diabetes, we can catch the high blood pressure issues earlier in the stages. Maybe it's not resulting into a triple bypass surgery, which costs us thousands. So in that, we're going to continue to work on enable the wellness programs. We still do the little wellness visits here, which we'll continue to do. We'll still offer the flu vaccinations and stuff like that, so the employees continue to take care of themselves.
Tomorrow, 12 o'clock.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Ruggles.
I seem to recall that we had a policy for expenses, medical expenses that were extraordinary.
We do.
So
Stop loss.
Stop loss.
the ICU baby wouldn't fall under that policy, or
If it goes over 500.
Yeah, if it goes over 500,000, but we would never hope for that to happen, but if it's a minor situation that the baby's in ICU, we may not hit our deductible for the stop loss.
okay.
But the more extraordinary, yes, then we would receive a refund from the stop loss
So
insurance.
I just wanted
Yeah.
counsel not.
No, it's a
worry
perfect
about-
question.
We have a whole bunch of major things, and then all of a sudden we're paying enormous amounts,
Well,
right?
yes and no.
Okay,
All right.
we'll start with yes.
The 500,000 is per individual.
Per individual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's there.
Okay, so just keep that in mind. So this is what my point, going back to the budget on this. Those are all relative points. We have a budget amount here in Fund 252, all right? And you can review the healthcare claims line item, all right? If we go over that for whatever reason, we do have some insurances in place, assurances that the price will not escalate. However, you could have multiple threats to that budget, especially if you don't go over 500,000. On the 500,000, that's since inception too. It's not just per year. It could be over like a multi-year period. With this new vendor, we are also with BSI. We are looking at our current insurer, which is Avalon, and potentially looking for equal or better, as Estelle had mentioned, coverage and potentially a discounted rate. So that's good. So there's some wiggle room here on the positive side. On the negative side, though, what we've seen, this is why we had to adjust our budget by $800,000, is that at the end of each year, we've been dipping into the healthcare fund. So going back to that discussion that we had earlier, our current level right now is $3 million, roughly. We may have to revisit our target, but we've been funding it around 1 to 1.5 million. This year, most likely, I think I believe we're going to go. We have to dip into the fund balance, and then we always replenish if we have a small surplus. If there's a small surplus in the general fund at the end of the year, we're always plus or minus a couple $100,000. That does, at the big scheme of things, that doesn't really affect the general fund when we have like a $34 million fund. A couple $100,000 doesn't really sway things. But if there's a surplus, we usually put that money into the healthcare fund. All right, but the healthcare fund itself alone, if expenses exceed what our estimates were going to be, we have to dip into the healthcare fund, and that's been saving us year over year, in many years, in many cases. I just want to make sure I bring that note up, okay? So just so we're all aware on how that works. And so when we dip into that healthcare fund, into 252, we usually replenish it if there's a small surplus.
And then just one more note, so I don't make anyone nervous. With us switching to BSI, I did say that there have a lot of opportunities for us to get different, better vendors. But for 2025, currently we're only looking at a Avalon, which is our stop loss, and we are looking at life insurance. The policies will not change. We're just trying to find possibly a less or a more, save more money on our insurances, but no plans will change, no benefits will change. I don't want anyone to get nervous that we're changing medical or dental or anything for 2025.
I like the stop gap there. I like that. That's good. It's really good.
Did you want to repeat that again?
I probably should, especially right now. And then the final review that I'll go over with you is our workers' compensation. Shelley handles a lot of the workers' compensation. For a little bit, she was out. But she does do a good job with that. She continues to monitor the workers' comp. We're getting a little bit more involved with workers' comp. We currently show a 6.9 increase with the budget. With some recent developments over the past few weeks, months, we do expect a decrease in that for 2025. We'll continue to review claims with the third-party administrator. We do that on a quarterly basis. We do either a Zoom or they come in, we sit down and we basically review claim by claim to get a better understanding of what's going on. We network with St. Luke's for the case managers. We're gonna kind of put them in place a little bit stronger and start to utilize them a little bit more so that way we can get employees back to work possibly sooner, if not at least on light duty. And then continuous education is really important. As the more employees understand about what they have and what they're doing and ways to prevent workers' comp, the better off we will be as a city.
You say in the next few months you project the workers' comp going down?
Correct.
The losses?
No.
The overall.
Next
overall,
year,
but it's
next year we expect it to go down.
based on what, the rate?
Based on
Against the increase?
based on, so we're self-insured for workman's comp. All right, and we know that we have a claims amount. We have a trend for claims. Right. There's also a benefit that's paid in workman's comp, which is called a loss of pay benefit. all right? And these are individuals that are on a long-term disability, if you will. So they get their salary, a portion of their salary paid through this workman's comp fund. You can settle on those claims. So we've settled on several claims, and then we can easily project then that we're not going to have that expense. So we expect that, we know that expense is going to go down. To Excel's point, to give you a little bit more detail, one has been settled so far. The second one is pending. We expect to settle on it, I think, by the end of the year. And we actually may have to make a budget transfer. But that's the reason why we expect it to go down. We just haven't settled on it yet. So we're just going to keep an eye on it. So we'll keep you informed.
Okay.
Does that answer the question? Okay.
Looks like Mazen doesn't want to come up.
Mazen has one.
Uh-oh, it's the quiet storm.
Mazen, do you want to come sit?
Thank you for wearing your jacket.
It's cold here for some reason. I don't know. I always get cold here. I guess we'll start with my. There we go. This is better. Good evening. The 2025 ID budget, there's about a 10.5% increase from last year. One of the services that it's the renewing some of the maintenance support on some of the hardware that we bought in 2021, about like $45,000 to $50,000. I don't have a final quote yet. I listed here some of the services that we pay from IT. You can see the list here. And then some of the projects that we're planning for 2025 is upgrading the access card and the camera systems. Right now, the system is too old, does not give us flexibility as we want, and we want to integrate the access card with the camera system. So this way, if there's like an alarm, we'll be able to get a text message or an email and see, what triggered, somebody in the building. We can see that person. Police will have
Just
access.
speak into the mic. We're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So I was saying that we're planning to upgrade the access card and the camera system in City Hall. This way it gives us more flexibility in terms of, arm, disarm the building, grant access to managers and directors, and also if there is an alarm in the building, the cameras will be able to actually point to that section and we'll be able to see what's going on. Right now, we don't have that visibility. So,
Sorry, man, can you do that from off-site? If you were home, would you be able to look at the camera?
exactly, yeah. And then police, we can designate somebody from police, whoever on duty to have that, so this way. Because most of the time I get the alarm, I don't know what's going on, so I say, hey, dispatch, fire, wherever it is. Now I'll be able to, to tell.
Good move.
So,
Do we pay the postage for Berkheimer?
it's not, no, it's more like a service, right? It's not postage for,
Well, they do a mailing and they bill
yeah.
us then for the mailing.
So like when we refill the stamp machine, stuff, all that comes from IT. It's part of the IT budget.
I think those are
Somebody's got to explain that one to me.
two different things.
But-
So the mail machine that we use downstairs for anything that we mail out of City Hall is paid through the IT budget. So that's is it Pitney Bowes that we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pitney Bowes does that. But as far as Berkheimer, yes. So they do mailings with for the per capita and other taxes and yeah, they do invoice us for basically those bills that they send out.
And the reason for that, because the general ledger accounts for postage and stamps are just part of IT. So that's why you see it.
I think Dr. Ruggles is more asking why are we getting
Oh,
that, not why it's going to you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll leave that up
I
to you
mean,
then.
we have an outside vendor collecting our taxes. Why should we pay the postage for what they're sending out?
I believe that's in the agreement. That's why I had asked council some months back to move away from Berkheimer and move everything under Keystone Collections, which is in process.
Just tell us who you want to move to.
Well, council did approve the move to Keystone.
Yeah.
So our EIT
I mean,
collector.
that's wrong.
I have a question regarding UPS, for example. Someone QCing on a quarterly or biannual basis, like the UPS charges. I'm just pulling this from some work experience. We look at it on a quarterly basis. Sometimes some people will select, instead of ground shipping, overnight even though ground shipping, like from a regional standpoint, will get there maybe a few hours later or the next day, sometimes those charges are pretty heavy. Is anyone reviewing that and accesses on a regular basis?
I think Michelle does downstairs the shipping, but I don't know who else have access to that account, so I'll just punt this to Mark.
Yeah, I mean, if not, I would recommend pulling the report on a regular basis just to make sure people are, not that they're not, I'm sure they're sending out things that need to be sent out, but sometimes we've noticed that employees select a different delivery period,
Yeah,
and that can
exactly.
really drive up costs. So we've saved significantly at my day job by looking at that regularly. So just a
Okay, well, no, thank you.
Yeah,
We'll take a look at that.
piece.
I know
It
there's
may or
not a
it
lot.
might not be material at all, but
Yeah, I don't know that we overnight a lot of things, but it's good to just make sure, yeah, that we do check that and then set policies, yeah, that say, okay, for, if it needs to be there overnight, obviously, select this, but
yeah,
everything else
you
can
may very well
kinda
need
go.
to at times.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to mention, although I don't have a revenue line item here, but we're trying to disconnect the agreement that we have with Crown Castle, which is about 94. So obviously we disconnect that because we were having some issue with the service. This was signed in 2019, but did not activate until 2022. But we have 2 more years of service on it. So there could be a saving. Obviously, when we disconnect it, we have to bring another ISP. So there could be around $50,000 in saving that this could be coming in next year. Question? Go ahead.
I see the fiber service for City Hall, Police Department, Fire, Public Works Building.
That's the Crown Castle one.
Yeah. Then the next line is other internet services, all city locations.
So
What? I thought that would be all of the city locations.
no. So we have faxes, we have cable modems. There's Humor Park. There's the backup internet as well. So there's a whole lot of other services that Bill Service Electric, Pentella Data. So this is all. I just didn't itemize it. I just kind of like all grouped it. But one of them is the Crown Castle is the major one that we pay. So because IT pays
So it
for
might not be internet, it might be other
phone.
services.
Yep, it could be
Okay,
phone,
so-
could be a fax.
Okay.
Yeah, like $200 here, 300, 500 a month. There's one bill from Pentel Data, which is about 30, almost 30 grand plus. That's like $3,000 a year. And one of them is like $500 for the flash park system that we put in the garage because we had to get fiber in there. So they add up.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, when I saw fiber services, to me, that was internet, okay?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight that.
Looked like everybody, okay? And then you said other internet services, all city locations. I'm like, where else could we
I should have.
do other than those?
Yeah, I should have put like phone and
Yeah.
et cetera in there.
I get it.
Yeah, so in 2025, there could be that at least $50,000 in saving, and in 2026, that 45 for renewal, that could actually be taken out. So there could be 2026 about $100,000 in saving, assuming we don't add any other services. So I just want to mention that. Louis? No, I think I'm done. I just want to mention that I don't have a revenue line item, but I just want to say I do try to decrease cost, I mean.
And I would back Mazen up on that. He's very, very responsible with the money that he has. So he does always shop around, and we try to figure out ways that we can save money and still provide the service that we need to. So I will give him kudos for that too.
Thanks, Mark.
Matt, a question for you.
Sure.
When we started live streaming committee meetings, we pushed for it, and a lot of feedback we got was going to cost more money. What does that look like going into 2025 now that we're going to live stream all the committee meetings?
Cost money in terms of, I don't recall.
Overtime for Mazen or whoever he has working on those days.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall.
Well, I think it was more for if we had to hire a part-time person, because things change over the year. Number two also was for loading all of the videos like on servers and maintaining them, and the cost of a server.
You might have meant also the other boards meeting probably, because that's
No, but it's personnel. We can discuss that another time.
yeah. Okay.
It's not that. All right, thank you.
I think I'm done with my, any other questions?
Can you explain that solicitor's office? What is that? Best law subscription.
I'll leave that up to,
All Joe's
I was
mag-
like,
Joe.
there's no way Joel is sitting in the back.
Is it up to 11,000 now?
yeah, I think it was like 800 a month, then went up to 950, and I'm sure by
Oh,
January it's
per
gonna be
month.
another increase.
Well, when we get the increase, I'll review that with Jeremy. Westlaw is the legal research tool, and this is particularly designed for, it has, there are different libraries that you could access. So Jeremy primarily helped select which program, because he was using Westlaw. I make it up, so I don't need to look at the library, the law, no, but no, seriously.
It costs 11,000.
Well, no, the key is 900 a month. It's two. I think it's only Jeremy and I who have access too. We have three. When I make my report, we have a second assistant, but I don't think he has the access to it. I think it's just the two of us.
Yeah, I don't recall if it's a shared login, you know.
Well, I think you have a number of people who are allowed.
I
So
think, yeah, it's two. But I'm not sure if he's sharing the login with the third person.
Oh, I don't know either, and I don't know if he has other access. But the bottom line is that's our law library, and it's still a lot less expensive than what used to be when we ordered books. So it's the way when we have to research a case, we go in there and utilize that. And Jeremy felt that the Westlaw program was far superior, and he does more. I mean, when I was joking about making it up, I do go in there from time to time, and it is a good tool. But that's what it is. It's when we get to our budget has nothing but our salary. So there's a lot of legal related expenses that run through other budgets and other people. And that's what it is. That's the explanation. It's the library, and it's expensive because they're not, it's interesting. When you look at court cases, you would think maybe there would be a public resource to all the cases, but there isn't. It's the Westlaw software tool helps you with the research, and they have different annotations that you could go into. It's a superior way of being able to put together legal research in an appropriate brief, and we do have a number of cases that Jerry and I have been handling that we wouldn't be able to without that kind of tool.
Yeah, 100%, and I support that. This $11,000 actually probably saves us at least $50,000 to $100,000, because that means we don't have to go to outside labor counsel for their research and their access to Westlaw and the databases, etc. We do try to keep some cases in-house, some grievances in-house, but to Joel's point, we need a tool for research. So it's a good tool.
I'm just curious, Mr. Joel, not about this. I'm personally curious. Like, there are like public law libraries, right, that public can use.
The courthouse.
The courthouse.
The courthouse is the
Are
best.
those cases different than the Westgate?
This is so we could do it at our office and not go to the courthouse. I mean,
I think you use CPM.
Excuse me?
I can use CPMS. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm just asking, like, it's the same cases, or they're like.
No, the libraries. When I've gone up to the courthouse, and because I have done that before we had this tool available, and not necessarily city-related work, but for my own work, they have a pretty decent library, but this has certain options that may be available up at the courthouse. But the thing is, if Jeremy's sitting there with his laptop and he logs in because you're in a particular place, you can't just run to the courthouse. So it's really a matter of the convenience and the better use of our time. And in addition to it, if somebody's sitting at that screen at the courthouse, there's just a limited number of computers for the self.
I get that.
Although frankly, it's a great experience. Going to the law library is a great experience because you meet a lot of people who have never got a law degree, who know more law than anybody else, or at least they think they do. Yeah.
That's good. We don't want to hear about it.
You ask me a question, you get a monologue. I'm sorry.
And I just want to mention that most of these services have, a lot of companies now are just doing like 5, 6, 7, 8%. Some of them are 10% increases year after year. It's just become like, grocery, like a tag on. So, go ahead.
Question
Yes.
for Louis. I just not sure where it falls, but where do cell phones fall? It's not in the IT budget?
Oh, it's in administration, I think in,
Oh, in administration, okay.
hold on a second.
Yeah, there's PD pays for some, and then some paid by administration.
Hold on one second. Let's pull it up. It's in the expenses, in administration department. So let me just go through there. We'll give you the number.
I can find out if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, hold on. I have it here too, but
Thank you.
it's labeled, oh, excuse me. No, it's not. That was an old one. I'm pretty sure it's in management services. We just have to double check right now. It's in management services, Mark. I'll give you the number. 1,000-43121. Oh, you got it? Could you, we need to confirm that, how much the cell phone bill is. Oh, excuse me, what, 43124? 43124. I need to ask my need to expand it. Could you?
With that account, we only pay for like City Hall, Public Works, codes, PD. They have their own budget for the services they use.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, this is an administration's budget. The administrator, so to speak, is Mazen. So he puts in the invoices and manages that account directly. I mean, it probably could be moved to IT, but we kept it in administration. It doesn't.
Yeah, it was
doesn't
always
matter.
the same, so we just kept it. There are some services that can be moved around, but just go with the.
My only concern is if we split it up, I mean, it seems like we have so many cell phones that, we should be able to be getting those fixed.
So I actually.
And we should be shopping for that every year, I would think.
Actually, you brought up a good point. Because we are a city, because we're CoStar, we get actually the worst deal. I came from the private sector, and I can actually negotiate better pricing than I can do with the government-based services. And that's what I'm seeing since I started here. That's what I'm seeing, because they always say, CoStar, this is the price that we have to give you. That's one reason why taxes keep going up every year.
We haven't raised taxes, but.
No, I'm not saying new,
Yeah.
but overall.
Yeah.
For other, it's very, because like sometimes in the private sector, I would say I have like 3 lines, I want to be able to buy phones. So they would say, okay, we'll give you the phones for, $1 or $50. I'm noticing here that, hey, this is the price at $300. We can even drop it $1, because if we give it for the city of Easton, we have to give it to, Allentown, et cetera, et cetera. So I find the prices tend to be higher compare.
Well, we don't have to go through CoStars. We would have to bid it out. We would have to put out an RFP and then invite individuals, firms to compete for that RFP.
Yeah, I mean, normally, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure how that would work, because, we have Verizon, we have T-Mobile, we have Split. For some reason, I've been moving some service to T-Mobile because I'm getting a better rate, but I don't want to move everybody, because you just don't know how the service is covered. Some people take their phones with them home, so I just don't know how T-Mobile coverage is. So since I came in, we actually were able to lower the cost. There were some numbers that we don't need, so forth, that we were able to manage that and lower the cost.
Mazen or
Cell
Lewis?
phones have always been sorry.
No, go ahead.
Cell phones have always been a issue for me, because when I was on the sewer board, we had technicians who went out in the field, and both of them had a cell phone that we were paying for. And we looked at it, and I think over the course of a year, they used it cell phones that we're paying for that we used once over the course of the entire year. And we were like, who's watching this,
Well, we did recently in the past year or so, did an audit, and we contacted certain individuals and asked them to return their phone in. One of them was, the manager of HR, Stephanie Weber. Actually, I approached her and I said, Stephanie, you're not using your phone.
Yeah.
So she goes, here you go.
Yeah.
And she was right, she knew immediately. The controller was another one, and there were several others that we did go through, do that audit.
So
We
Louis,
do check.
Okay, good.
We do
But
check
sometimes
them.
when it gets distributed too much, it just, you lose track,
No, I think that the deeper dive is if and it's a big undertaking to put out an RFP, and like Mazen said, it's easier said than done. Using CoStars probably saves a lot of time. Now, if Mazen was only doing cell phones, then I would say we could probably handle that. It seems like it's a lot. I mean, you ask him; he's the one who would do it.
I don't know, Joel, can we do that? Go outside the CoStar and,
Yeah, Lewis is exactly, or City Administrator Campos. I'm trying to remember what our rules are on etiquette. We're not supposed to be informal. Absolutely correct that if we want to bid out anything with RFPs, the CoStar was just like an easy way to know that we're in compliance. Because every time you do an RFP, there's a lot of steps involved, with the advertising and analyzing it, and then you're stuck with the lowest bidder, which isn't always the best, but the issue then is if you say, well, you're not the best because you have a fuzzy history here, that becomes a subjective criteria that could be challenged in court, and that's why CoStar becomes a very convenient way of doing it. But we could, if there's enough money involved and we really think the private sector is going to get a better deal, we could certainly do that.
so, I mean, obviously there's T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon, so I'm not sure if we do bid it out, they might just come back and say, hey, well, it's still a service for,
Well, the advantage of having a
City.
73-year-old solicitor is I could go through AARP and you get you cellular one or whatever it's called.
I'm going to look into that and see if this is something that we can, obviously, if we have 100 phones and that's $10 a month that we can reduce the service, it adds up, so. I'll look
Mazen,
into
how
that.
many staff members have a phone?
Ooh.
And do they all really need a phone? I mean, nowadays, everything is unlimited. So if we have people that are just talking with
So we're not,
staff inside City Hall, do they really need a phone?
so we're not, obviously, we're not paying for, for data or for, text messages because it's an unlimited plan, but I'm not sure, I can get you those numbers between us and PD.
It's a cell phone.
One thing is to point out is that right to know law, because if you're using your personal, so some people might say,
That becomes there.
yeah, so some people might say like, well, I don't want, like, I use my personal cell phone, so, but there are some people says like, well, I want a city cell phone. If you want to call me after hours or during, I need, because I don't want my phone to be exposed to that
Yeah.
right to know law. So
Absolutely.
there's a lot of,
There's a lot of moving parts with that now.
exactly.
Yeah, I think we'd like to see, or I'd like to see how many phones we have out there, what departments.
And Lewis's phone bill.
Mine, I pay for the phone, so
Cancel that.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
I
So
I won't show you my bill. But to go back on that, is 04324, Dr. Ruggles. It's labeled in administration, it's labeled cell phones. It was, Mazen, it was, unless you have multiple places where you're putting it, but I don't think so. It's, the budget is $36,000.
That's a big increase, though.
It's a $6,000 increase.
From last year?
20% increase now.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes,
Whereas 23 to 24 was none.
well, remember, so sometimes we buy phones, upgrades. Somebody has like an iPhone 10 that's not working, so those could be $300-400, and it'll just add
Is
up.
there a reason someone needs an iPhone for their work phone too? I mean, I understand. you
Actually, they cost the same,
needing a
when it comes to the
camera and
service
things like
plan,
that
the
for
flip
service.
phone are actually the same service as the regular, smartphone. They're checking their email. Some people don't want email on their personal phone.
Yeah,
text
I
message.
understand the need for work phones, but
the next
like
bell?
needing an iPhone versus, I don't know, like And it may be different because you're bidding out for
Yeah, I mean,
a government.
there's a
I
lot of,
mean, every time when I work at the bank, they find out I'm from the bank, the cost goes up. So I get that side of it sometimes too.
yeah, I mean,
You have deep pockets.
there's a lot of, but we can just, I don't know, I'm not sure really what's the right answer, whether it's like, hey, we're gonna give you a flip phone, but you can't check your email if you're on the field. Do we limit it to,
I don't think anyone needs a flip phone. You need a smartphone, but you know,
Yeah, but there's maybe
what
not
are the other options?
$1,500 iPhone. Maybe.
Well, we can go back to
No,
BlackBerry.
there's always like a discount because on the contract. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes we, instead of like right now iPhone 16, so we give the iPhone 14. So instead of paying 500, it's like $120 or $200 or so.
Start buying the refurbs.
That's right, that's right.
Well, I mean,
Refurbished.
Again, I'm not sure really. We can go on a lot, but are we gonna save $50,000? I don't think so. It's gonna be like $4,000, $5,000 that we can just maybe. Does it really make sense to go
Budget's for 36.
every 2 years? We can do, but some people we don't do that every.
For phones, for cell phones, do we have a replacement policy?
So it's not automatic. We don't just say every 2 years we're just doing that.
Yeah.
Only if the phone is like just not working, broken, something wrong with the audio, that's when we do it. Other than that,
Do we
we
have a
don't.
policy for multiple offenders? So if somebody's breaking like 3 phones a year, are we
I have to
charging?
I have to check, but I haven't ran into
So
actually one yet.
the answer is no, because we haven't had an issue.
Okay,
I'm not kidding.
that's
like,
fair.
when unless I have an issue, then we'll put a policy in place, right? For the most part, then you have your standard policies that are required by federal law. But on phones in particular, once an individual has a phone, not everyone gets a phone. Like the clerks are not getting phones, cell phones. All right. If you're a code inspector, maybe they may get.
They get iPads.
Yeah, they get iPads. Do they get cell phones?
No, just iPads that yeah.
Directors get phones. All right. I got a phone, but I opted to pay for my own service. All right. Most times, most individuals, once they're here, their phone is staying with them for life. Like they don't change, they don't upgrade. And only when, like, I think with their specials, when we offer like a no cost upgrade where you can trade it in, then we'll upgrade it and we'll try to get the best possible phone for that individual. But because there's no cost to us,
Yeah.
there's zero. I mean, but we haven't had, other than the only issue that we've had is non-utilization of phones. When we looked at the report, we're like, hey, wait a minute, so and so is not using their phone. I think it's time to discontinue it. That's where we've saved some money, but not on the.
Yeah, I mean.
Not on like habitual. Someone's breaking their phone all the time.
No, I since I've been here, I think I haven't had somebody come up and says like, hey, my phone is, screen is broken. It's always been like maybe there's no audio. I mean, last week we replaced somebody because he had an iPhone 11 and the speaker stopped working.
Are we allowed to provide a stipend to employees who decide to just use their personal device? That
Yes.
might help drive up
So,
utilization of
we
personal
do
devices.
we do have that.
Okay.
But the threat, and I think we pay somewhere like $40-some per phone. All right. So this phone does not cost the city $40-some.
Mhm.
We do have a stipend that's in place. That's $25. We haven't rolled it out formally. I don't take that stipend for this phone. But the issue is what Mazen said, is that any information on this phone that's related to employees here can be subject to, is subject to right to know.
Understandable. Yeah, no, I mean, like,
So you have to be
people
willing.
Everyone should know what they're signing up for.
Yeah.
If they take the stipend and use their personal device, I would agree with that.
Yeah, that's right, and you would have to sign off on it. I mean, so I don't. We have that policy in place. As Estelle said, we're rolling out these policies probably by the end of the year. That's one of them, but we would have to have some sort of disclosures in place too.
Understandable.
Just
And
because it saves us.
Yeah,
it
thank
saves
you.
us.
the increase from last year, there could have been like some iPads in there that we added, so that could have been why it's, I don't know, $6,000.
Could we provide that detail? So could you send that to Mark and I, and then we're going to send it to council, so we can detail why there was a $6,000 increase.
I can, yeah. I mean, I'll have to go review some.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think we put that in there, so there has to be a reason why.
I had one of the reasons I was asking this, because I had an individual tell me that they get, there we go. I had an individual tell me that their cell phone, which was a city cell phone, failed the most time because of the battery, and so they have to get another one because of the battery. And I was just wondering if we kind of watch that and say, okay, we're not going to get that one anymore because the battery goes, or do we just say, okay, here's a new one, and go from there? I mean, that doesn't seem like a good way to manage it. So,
Sorry, I might have missed. So you're saying like a specific model, battery issue with a specific model?
well, yeah, there was a
Just the
specific
user-
model that continually goes out because of the battery.
Oh.
And so they'd have to get a new one because the battery went.
Yeah, we haven't ran it. I mean, most of our users are actually iPhone users, so we haven't had a problem where, there's a battery issue after 6 months or 7 months, and if there is, it's covered by a warranty. Or even after 1 year, I've been here 3 years, I haven't seen anybody come back and says like, hey, my battery is not working or anything like that. So we've been okay on the hardware. Like I said, the person that had issue with the iPhone, it's iPhone 11, so we're talking about like 5-6 years iPhone.
Okay.
That had a speaker issue, and some people might still be using iPhone 11 or 12.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but the increase from 2022, 23 to 24, or 24 to 25?
24 to
There was no
25.
increase 23 to 24.
I think I added. I remember sending more. So I just added there just in case there's some expenses. So we might not use that $6,000. I meant that from last year to this year. The 23 to 24, I thought there was an increase of $6,000. So that might have, there could be a surplus maybe, hopefully. Yeah.
Imagine you just have, council just found $6,000. Thank you very much.
I mean, I'm gonna be saving $4,000 on the Pendelida renewal contract, so here we go. I just offset it by $4,000.
Well, it's not done yet, so like when it happens.
No, not the Crown Castle. The Pendelida by itself. There's going to be $4,000 that we'll save next year. So.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the IT budget? All right, on that note, I think Joel wants to discuss the solicitor's budget. I gotta get out of the chair. I'm just. Name and address, please.
Oh.
You got 5 minutes.
I don't know. Well, let me check my phone, which I pay for myself, and I don't get any reimbursement. And the interesting thing is the CNN report just came out that one dead is a multi-state E. coli outbreak tied to McDonald's Quarter Pounders. Now, I'm just wondering if that came out of a place in Bucks County where some guy was making believe he was, pushing fries. But
I just had the same thought.
Anyway, just very briefly, the solicitor's budget is purely the 3 personnel members and a small stipend for our secretarial allowance for Jeremy and I, which is really small if I consider how much time I secretary and how much paper I use and everything, phones and everything else in my office, that overhead is really just a fraction. But I'm happy for the public service that we can provide, and basically, we have. Myself and Jeremy do the day-to-day, advice and whenever things come up, and of course when you see us at meetings, etc., and lots of times when you never see us, because the emails are always coming during the course of the day from everywhere, because other lawyers just think that the first place to go is to talk to the solicitor, so they do that, and we try to uphold the good image of the city, and I think we do have generally a good reputation of being helpful to the public and to everyone else, which I think is very important. But we also have a second assistant solicitor, just so you know. That's Brian Lawsa. He does not get any the fringe benefits, but he is. I consider him the solicitor to the finance department, but he also plays an important role in being backup to both Jeremy and I, particularly if we get involved with litigation. And we've just assigned him his first personal injury defense case, what we're trying to do is try to save some money where otherwise we go to outside defense counsel, which is the smart move because they do that all the time. They know all the steps. But from my experience, when I was an assistant solicitor, I defended a couple of those cases that the city was named as a defendant, but they're really pretty much on the periphery. You could file a cross claim against the property owner. Slip and fall case is the example of the case that we have now. And we're doing this on a carefully screened basis. If we evaluate a case that we think we can save ourselves costs on outside counsel and help basically with the savings fund that other position, that's the objective of trying to advance it. But we could we could wind up in some large litigation that we think we could still handle in-house. And we've had that with, recently with the arbitration, the mediation dealing with the issues on the Ford Street garage. We save a lot of money by doing that in-house. So we try to do as much as we can, expanding from just giving advice and going over contracts and working on real estate by getting involved with some of the litigation ourselves. Although we have to be prudent about it because there are a lot of matters that require real specialization, and we don't want to be we want to be smart on how we handle all litigation, and that's it. There's nothing in our budget that's different from last year, other than if you did build in an increase. I don't even know. I hope no. Yeah.
All non-salary all non-salary related expenses are flat, zero.
Okay.
So I think we discussed it.
Well, non-salary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but salaries have.
We've explained the salary and fringes have gone up. So
Yeah.
anything that you look at when you look at that
But
budget.
Jeremy and I try to be very healthy, so we've not caused, any. Well, we can't talk about because of HIPAA. I can't even talk about my own health. But if you have any questions, I'm here to answer that. No, Roger.
Is it HIPAA related?
Remind me, it seems like last year we talked about that third solicitor,
Yes.
and that third solicitor was going to come on board and was going to pursue delinquent accounts, and that those delinquent accounts were going to be more than what is going to be paid for this the solicitor, and it never happened. What happened?
Okay, that's a good question. Fair. Mark, you want to answer it?
Sure. Well, Brian's focus primarily with the finance department was on delinquent BPT. So when we ran into walls with businesses that weren't complying, we did go to him, and he was able to bring in, I would say, a good amount of funds for, again, folks who were not willing to pay when our revenue agent showed up at the door.
So let's just calibrate that. So a letter was sent, and as a result of that letter, we had a collection that occurred. So we can quantify that, and that's something that we could provide to Dr. Ruggles. We just have to get maybe not provide names. I think there's some confidentiality, but we could just quantify that for you. So go ahead, keep going, Mark.
So, but
Yep.
the monies for that individual, is that in this budget or is that somewhere else? So we're talking about,
You would just see the revenues. I mean, you wouldn't even realize
Right.
what.
we had to pay him, right?
Yeah, well, his salary is a part of the solicitor's budget. It's right in there.
It's the salaries.
Yes.
It's within the, it's
Okay,
okay.
okay.
Without any fringe benefits. And by the way, should the finance department ever identify other areas for collection or a particular a delinquent taxpayer that does not go to Portnoy, because in a lot of the areas of revenue, it's more efficient to use Portnoy, particularly when we run into bankruptcy. I mean, they have the means, but that doesn't mean if we run into a case, Mr. Loss is the one who's going to be assigned to try to collect that money. So that's I mean that we took a hard look at that position. I mean this fall to decide whether it was there. I mean, I know it's good for Jeremy and I to know there's someone who could back us up if something happened where we couldn't do it, or we have, multiple conflicts. But beyond that, we still were taking a look at it, and I'm still, and that's why we put in this personal injury case. And hopefully, the course of the year, if we get 3 of those cases, in addition to whatever he saves on pays for itself on finances, in addition to having that extra body around who's somewhat familiar with what's going on, it will hopefully be a significant net gain as if we didn't have that person there. He also takes care of all satisfaction of liens and judgments, and that actually is that helps give Jeremy and I more time to do a lot of the things that we're doing, because we do cover a lot. But that doesn't mean that there won't be an opportunity to save even more money.
Well, the amount of monies that are out there that are unpaid have always been, to me, something that was too big of a number. And, I thought that this person was going to be very helpful in decreasing that number significantly. And that's not just chasing a couple of cases here and there. It's
well, we've discussed the idea, and it really has to come generate out of the finance department. But if there's a way to put together an audit system, that he can help with, and that's one of the reasons he was hired. He has experience in doing that. I don't remember if it was Whitehall, but he's worked on that in Lehigh County, so that if that comes through, but he needs the directions from the finance department. I can't identify it.
So I think maybe, and I don't expect you to do it during budget season, but maybe early next year, we could get some handle on what those unpaid things are out there, whether they be multiple parking tickets or whatever, so we can identify, be able to identify it a little bit better and have some idea of how much money that is. Because I remember back when we were talking about it a few years ago, it was over $1 million.
Well, that was for parking tickets.
Well, for all unpaid stuff, yeah.
Well, as you know, Portnoy is also.
Well, yeah, and I realize some of it goes there, but there's other things too, and there's.
We haven't had Brian focus or look at parking tickets, but we can certainly have that discussion internally. He's been focusing internally on finance, and then now most recently, as Joel has said, on various lawsuits that we may receive as a result of an insurance claim. Mm-hmm. So he's working at least on one right now, but there's a lot of moving parts to that. We're determining if that is if this is a good use of our resource, or do we still have to outsource it? Believe it or not, sometimes it's easier to outsource it because of the firm that we use have paralegals, et cetera, and can keep the cost down.
Right.
So, and mind you, even at $40,000, this is a part-time solicitor.
Right.
So, we're trying to be selective. Joel and I had met on this subject to see what we can do to have Brian handle more cases. Now, these trip and fall type cases doesn't necessarily on average move the needle in terms of legal expenses, but it does help. It could be $5,000 worth of legal expenses.
Right.
All right. There are other cases that we could use that could easily balloon to double digits, like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in expenses, which we see, but they're more on employee-related issues. Grievances, also union-related issues could also go that way too. But we usually utilize Joel, not Brian, on those kinds of issues because he has just more experience on it. And that's where then Westlaw comes into play. So there's just
but that's also where Brian comes into play, because knowing that I don't have to worry about satisfying liens, which Bill Murphy used to do, it's bad use of his time when we could be going over HR issues, which we do all the time, And I am sure we save a significant amount of money compared to municipalities who are going to labor council for every issue like that.
I will tell you one thing that we haven't encountered, so it's still good. And listen, I agree with you. We have to get these numbers, and I think we've had the discussion. First of all, we decided to keep the third solicitor in this budget. We did have a discussion on whether or not we were going to keep him, so I just want to make that clear. Okay, we had a deliberate discussion whether or not we should continue with the third solicitor. The decision was made when we presented it to the mayor that we should keep the third solicitor.
Yeah, and it was particularly because we had one big piece of potential litigation which could pop up any time, where we really need two people assigned to that case, because that's how much, if we're doing it in-house, that's how much it's going to take us. But if you go outside, you'll be paying
Oh, yeah,
a tremendous
we'll be
amount
paying a
of
lot
money.
more. It's more in the tone of $150, $200 to $300 an hour, easy. So the second thing that I do want to say that you guys don't see, but technically, but we handle a lot of right-to-know requests.
Yeah.
All right, and I can tell you that Jeremy is bogged down on right-to-know requests. All right, and really, there's no limit on what someone from the public, whether they're justified or not, 100%. And I'm telling you, whether they're justified or not, and that's the hard part. And unless you guys are all living it like we're living it, you have no clue on how much time right-to-know requests takes up from our solicitors. A lot of time. And it goes up and down. Now, Karen handles them, but when they become a problem, and she usually goes to Jeremy, and they usually discuss it, because he's the right-to-know request, you're the right-to-know request officer, but Jeremy has to review all of that work and then validate it. But Karen, how many times do you get right-to-know requests on a monthly basis?
Oh, gosh. Easily.
5?
5?
10?
In a month?
10.
Week.
While I was gone, I got 15, I think.
Okay.
So I get a lot.
So that's significant. And everything that Karen handles has to go to Jeremy. It's pressure on the solicitors. And I will tell you that the right-to-know request has no limits, so individuals can be ruthless. I mean, ruthless.
And there's a timetable. with
Well,
getting back to you, so
there's
that's-
5 days and 30 days. All right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of detail when you look at the right-to-know request.
It's absolutely insane. When you look at the legal system, and you look at how long courts take to go through steps, and if parties are litigating, taking 60, 90 days for discovery, right-to-know request, 5 days, you got to answer it. It's not just the solicitor checking to see, is this discoverable or not under the right-to-know, because there are exceptions, but the pressure on the entire city staff to respond. And I don't know when the legislature in Harrisburg will ever wake up to find a balance between legitimate transparency and abuse of that right. And there is tremendous abuse of that right. And the problem is, it hurts government's ability to respond to their individuals, because they are often spending half. I just can't imagine what it's like in West Easton to get an RTK request, and they basically grind to a halt. So instead of taking care of the sewers or whatever, they're answering because there are a lot of individuals who have nothing else to do but fill out right-to-know requests, and it's tremendously abused, and we can't resolve it because it's a state legislature. And we want to be transparent. We want to be, we like the idea, but the idea is, I'd like to see that idea balanced fairly.
Listen,
I'm sorry. We're
going to solicitors. That could be a tool, but most often than not, it's abused, or it's used. It's abused, or it's used for firms to try to get intel so they can sell something to the city. But for a small municipality, though, it's heavy. So it's a good tool if it's used correctly. I'm not gonna say it's not, but as a solicitor said, it's oftentimes abused and used to benefit a party for some sort of economic gain. But it has also its merit. So I want to put that on the record, because I know we're live streaming. So, but I need.
Oh, are we live streaming?
The public
gee,
needs to know that.
I just want to let you know of a mechanism that a municipality is using to dissuade right to knows. I was involved with one where, as the expert in the case, we filed a right to know. I got 10,000 files.
They dumped.
They just dumped.
But
And-
was it a big enough municipality that they had the ability to find the documents and?
Well, I think they found the documents, but they just padded them with, probably 9,900 more. And when you get those, you have to go through those to make sure where's the information that I really want,
Yeah.
And so you've just driven up the cost of that expert going through each one of those files.
And that's because they're giving to you electronically, right?
I
they're
just
not
donate
like-
it to somebody,
they're
But
not-
I mean, I guess there's different ways you could play that game. But I mean, that's something that I experienced. It was enormous amount of information. And probably 98% of it had no value.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it's only going to increase with AI because now the general public can just generate volumes of requests.
Yeah.
And
But we can generate volumes of information to them. If
Yeah.
they want to find it, there's information in it.
if
Good luck.
like well, it depends. You have we don't do that deliberately. We try to be very specific, to the request. I'm just saying that, from what we've seen in our experience, most times it's abused, but it is a good tool. And it can have its purpose. If it's not for the interest to benefit the individual who's using it. If you want to stop corruption, I think it's good to stop corruption. But if you're doing it because you have some sort of self-interest, then that's not good.
If all information is electronically coded somehow, all of it, then I can imagine a day not that far away where there'll be a program where a right to know request will go right into your AI program here to generate what the response would be.
You got that?
Well, that's what I was thinking with Mazin, and we'll just hook all the phone lines and all our electronics to the AI thing. When you present your new budget next year, there'll be an extra $50,000 for AI, and there'll be 20 less personnel in the city because we won't need to look for anything. But anyway, any other questions on the solicitor's report?
None for me.
Okay. Thank you.
We just have two more to, no.
I know that's true. I know that's not true.
All right, I think we're done here. Unless you have any questions.
We're done, I guess.
Yep.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
November 4th, 2:30.
My baby. Yes, ma'am. Hey, you found the other one too, huh? Get out of
See you
here.
tomorrow.
They put it back. They cooked it.
Yeah, before, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to meet?